You're listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with your host, Decal.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? It's your boy Decal here, hosting the podcast 135. Welcome out there, and I hope your Monday is going better than you anticipated it going this weekend. Boy, I've had a week, but I'm sure majority of us has had a week as well. So we're going to keep this thing pushing. So the E.I.T.H.R podcast is an elephant in the room, where we talk about issues, topics, and discussions of things that you normally would not be able to have with your peers, because most of the people tend to be one-sided, nearsighted, whatever side it is that they won't budge from. So we talk about certain things, and we're not trying to necessarily persuade you to agree with how we see it, but if anything, we try to encourage you to see it from a different angle. So even if you choose to still stand your ground, which is perfectly fine, we just encourage people to at least be a little bit more open to what it is that you're possibly disagreeing with. You can follow us on social media at the E.I.T.H.R, E.I.T.H.R on Instagram, as well as X. Got to start calling it Twitter, X. So for those of you who are listening, thank you very much for tuning in. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. Returning listeners, welcome back. We start this thing off every single episode with words of encouragement, inspirational, motivational. And we also like to give shout outs to people. So first thing I want to do is to give a shout out to this is kind of hurting me, but it's for good reasons, and it's also one of the topics. Colorado. Those who know, you know. Those who don't know, don't worry about it. But I want to give a shout out, man, to Coach Prime. He's out there turning that program 180 degrees from what Colorado as a collegiate football program once was. And we're going to talk about the game between Colorado State. And I normally try to stay away from sports on my podcast, just because I know a lot of you aren't really sports fanatics, but we're going to probably make you into some sports fanatics. So we're going to talk about that. So I want to give a shout out to Colorado, because what Coach Prime is doing is he's making a culture out there. And to me, that's extremely huge. So we're gonna give credit where credit is due. Inspirational, motivational. We're gonna talk about this also during this podcast as well. And stop expecting loyalty from people who can't even give you honesty. That's goddamn. That's such a huge thing for a lot of people, because last week 2 weeks I was MIA, and I keep a lot of my issues bottled up. A handful of people know, less than a handful of people kind of know what goes on in my personal life, just because I'm a very private person, even with those who know me. And I was having a conversation with someone, and it's kind of one of those things where you can tell me anything that's going on and I'll go to the grave with it. But when it comes to me sharing my information with people, I'm very, very reserved, because I guess I don't trust people to treat me the way I treat them, right? So prime example, I can't expect me from other people, even though I try in other aspects of it. In a grand scheme of things, my biggest fear is to share something with someone, and for whatever reason, their maturity level doesn't match my maturity level, and they turn around and use whatever it is that I shared with them against me, in a negative way. And so that's one reason why I'm very anti-trustworthy when it comes to people. But because I have that fear, I make it a very damn good point to not do that to other people. So it's very empathetically, I go out of my way to be the example in which I wish people were to give in return. But I don't trust too many people to do that. Whether that's all in my head, whether someone gives me a vibe, whether someone gives me some reason not to trust them. But the very small handful of people who I do trust, they understand that, and they do their best to protect, what I share with them with lock and key. And so it takes time. But listen, for those of you, man, you can't expect loyalty from people who can't even give you honesty. If someone's not going to be true to you, there's a very high chance they're not going to be true to you. So there's that. We're going to get into some of the topics when it comes to political hypocrisy and some other stuff, man. So hold on tight. It's your boy DK at the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Get a shot from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Most t-shirts are simply cool to look at or look in. Well, so are ours. But ours also aim to send a message. They aim to put a name on obstacles that once stood in your way and aren't there anymore. Struggles that you turned into successes and crushed. You made it look easy. Shop at mile.today. Mile.today. www.mile.today. A GNS collection.
This is Krista from Sacramento, and you're listening to D-Count on the E.I.T.H.R podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with D-Cal here, episode 135 from the GNS HQ here in Northern California. So one of the things I want to talk about is political hypocrisy, right? And there was a story. I'm just going to go to the Twitter account right quick at the E.I.T.H.R. So, if you guys haven't heard or seen much, this political battle going on between the red side and the blue side, Democrats and Republicans, right? Gang banging in suits. That's kind of how I see it. Instead of pistols as pens in penitentiaries. But there's a politician based out of Colorado. Her name is Lauren Boebert. I believe I'm saying it right. And she's been very stern on, the quote unquote, lack of better terms, the gay agenda, the trans agenda that the the libtards are pushing onto the world, right? So, very, very, strong stance on what she believes is to be, and that's cool, whatever, you have your belief in what you, okay, I'm not mad at that. She had a quote that says something to the effect of, turning boys into men before the liberals turn them into women, right? Because of this drag queen, transgender, rainbow culture that's contaminating our children, putting kids in danger, getting us further away from God and the moral being of how we're supposed to be as a Christian country, despite us claiming not to be a non-denominational country. We're a Christian at the same time. Figure that out. But there was a video that surfaced at a Beetlejuice date where there's kids around, and it appears that with her dude, she's getting groped by her date, her significant other, right? And man, there's an article. Hold on, I'm going through my phone real quick to find this. There's an article where she. Okay, it's on the E.I.T.H.R Instagram account where it says she blames vaping, groping slip up at the Beetlejuice show on eccentric personality. It's on her eccentric personality. Listen. Here's, you can go to the Instagram page, you can click on the article, you can read it yourself. But here's my biggest issue when it comes to political hypocrisy. And this goes to both moronic sides, right? In my opinion, when it comes to certain agendas, I just have this feeling, this feeling deep down. Both sides think the same way. They just go about it in one extreme versus the other. Here's what I mean by that. I feel my A1 made an example once, and she says, someone told her a Democrat will feed 100 people in faith that one person is starving. A Republican will starve 100 people in faith one person is lying. That's kind of how they go, right? And they both see the same picture, but they have their own personal agenda attached to that picture. And so therefore they not only explain or express passionately their perspective, but it also comes off as if they're aggressively attempt to discredit the opposition's perspective. Like, I'm going to knock you down to big myself up. In some cases, it works if you do it in a professional way. I've always been taught I don't need to bash my competition to speak highly of my own, or to speak highly of what I got going on. I've always was under the impression, talking bad about your competition ultimately lessens the quality of what you got going on. So with that said, I don't ever really knock anyone else's hustle. I just try to, big mine up. And we're going to get how this political hypocrisy kind of ties into sports too, when I was speaking about with Coach Prime in Colorado and Colorado State. So with them, it feels with the political thing, most liberals have a situation where, they feel a certain type of way about, let's say, for example, homosexuality, right? And with homosexuality, they believe, this is how a person is, this is how a person identifies them or herself to be. This is their skin, this is how they're comfortable, this is what they relate to. They should be allowed to do what they want. Okay, cool, got it. And then you have the conservative aspect, which is it's sin, it's ugly, it's evil, it's an abomination, it's all these other issues that they just can't see. All right, I get that. It's not your cup of tea. Makes sense. But I think what happens with anything that you do with political, it goes so extreme and flamboyant with it, where you go too extra to push really hard. It's like that one person who claims to be something and they just got to go super hard to spread it on super thick to get their point across. And it's like, you don't have to do that. But in many cases, that's exactly what happens in the population, whatever side of the fence you're on, the sheep on that side of the fence. You go so hard with them that almost like tribalism, right? It's like almost like tribalism. So when in actuality, both sides also feel what the opposing side feels, but they can't express it, they can't show it, they can't demonstrate it. Right? That's almost as if it's like, for example, sports teams. If you like the Raiders and you also like the Chiefs, that's taboo. You can't do that. It's one or the other, okay? Like growing up in the Bay Area or in Northern California, you can't like the Raiders and the Niners. That doesn't make any sense. You can't like the A's and the Giants. It doesn't make sense. You can't like the Warriors and the Kings. It doesn't make sense to some people. So you gotta go super hard on this side or that side. And if you are a person who says, I'm a diehard Kings fan, I bleed purple and black, like that's it. But I got love for the Warriors, because, if the Kings aren't in the playoffs, you got root for the Warriors. Or, the Kings are my number one team, but like living in Sacramento, the Kings are my number one team, but I also like the Lakers. Like that's taboo. You can't do that, right? Some people just go extra hard in the paint. When the truth is, in my opinion, you can have a team, but also still show respect to the other side, or to your rival, or to the other team in your area. When it comes to politics, like sports, you can't do that. Watching this video of Lauren Boebert, I hope I'm saying her name right, where, vaping, and when someone approached her about it, she pulled the whole, do you know who I am? First of all, that's tacky, that's low, that's cheap. That's kind of trashy. That's like somebody who goes around and tells people what to do because you have a title or a position that don't mean anything to anybody, right? Because you can get replaced like the person you replaced. But then the video of her getting groped on, and it appears, allegedly, she was rubbing the crotch of the guy she was with, who happened to be her boyfriend. Again, she wants to blame it on her eccentric personality. Like, come on, B. Like, just call it what it is. You freak nasty too, right? And you got caught up because you thought you weren't seeing. You thought my public persona is one thing, but who I am privately is something completely different. And but you want to blame it on everybody else but the person who did it, which was you, right? It's so funny that you get some liberals who are, peace and equity and unity and Black Lives Matter. But when they see someone like myself walking next to them, pulling up next to them in a parking lot, walking past their car, with dead ass BLM sticker on their car, they stop what they're doing, they turn around, they make it an extra point to go to make sure their doors are locked, or their purse is clutched between their arm and their body, or if you know that look when someone gives you when they look at you but they want to act like they're not looking at you, but you can totally tell they're watching you from the peripheral, but they're moving super slow, so it's kind of like they're observing to see what it is that you do, to see if it's safe to walk past you with the shopping cart. I'm like, how the hell are you? It's very, which one is it, right? It's which what are you? Are you all lives matter? Are you Black Lives Matter? Are you I'm not racist, but I'm not racist from a distance? Like, which is it? And you have some conservatives, like in this situation, who says, drag queens are tarnishing our children, and this is an abomination to this country, and we're going to hell in a handbasket because we're getting further away from God. Yet you're giving a hand job to your man with a bunch of kids around, thinking they're not going to pay attention to it. It's so many of us we want to live this shell or this avatar of who we want the world to believe we is. But then when push comes to shove and reality and darkness comes to light, you're the exact opposite. I can't rock with people who are like that. I just can't rock with you like that, man, because I'm not like that. I'm not built that way, right? And so anyone who understands your boy Decal, I am who I portray to be. Now, there have been times where I've had to work on myself internally, and I've had to work on myself mentally, and I had to work on myself psychologically, I had to work on myself emotionally to be a little bit more empathetic to certain situations. And I understand that there are cases where, and shout out to my homegirl Psalm, she loves this quote, where your intention and their perception are not always aligned, right? What my intention to say, to do, or to mean may not be the same on how you perceive it. So I do my best to be sure that I walk my talk and I talk my walk, like everything is aligned with one another, right? But when it comes to this political people, they say one thing, but behind closed doors, most of them are the flip-ass opposite of what they speak. It's a facade. It's almost like it's a facade. It's fugazi. It's a fake. It's like, that's not who you is, bro. Like I said, if you freak nasty behind closed doors, don't act prude and proper, prim and proper in public. Secondly, in a political position, you have to be mindful of any and everywhere you are, bro, in the public's eye, in the public, period. You just have to be. You're out in public as a political figure. You have to be aware that any and everything you do is going to be microscopically looked at and dissected. Because any and everyone's going to look to see anything they can get their hands on to take you apart or to get some dirt on you. Especially being a woman in a white male dominated political game. You have to know this. You have to understand The only place where you are safe, where the cameras cannot hurt you, are in your own home. Outside of that, you have to have the mindset, there's a paparazzi somewhere near me looking at me. You have to think that way. And for you to blame, what was the eccentric personality? To me, it sounds like a politician who got caught doing something she said was bad for other people to do, but because it was her who got caught doing it, it's not my fault because it's my personality. Oh, okay. When will we learn that these politicians, they're stupid? Well, they're stupid, but we're dumb to really believe at this point they're for real. They're salesmen, right? They're salesmen. So I don't know, man. And apparently her boyfriend that she was with, again, this is a conservative politician out of the state of Colorado whose boyfriend, another article I put on the social media, owns a gay-friendly bar that hosts drag shows. That's awesome. For a politician who's so much against gays, air quote, you're dating a man who's okay with gays. Either he's an idiot for dating the enemy, or she's more two-faced. Because there's a difference between dating someone who's okay with something you're not against versus dating someone who is for something you're against and you are openly, publicly bashing what your partner supports and your partner's still with you. I'm sorry, but that dog don't hunt. To me, that just looks like one of y'all's fake, and I don't think it's him. And for people to believe and or support what she's saying with that going on, it's hard to sit back and say, well, that's her personal life, this is her public life, or her business, or whatever the case is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't match, man. And like I said, there's so many politicians who are for something, but when the mic's off and the camera's not rolling, they're the opposite of that. And I don't know. For me personally, I don't dig folks who are two-faced like that. And that might be a strong description to give them, but that's my opinion and how I feel about it. And I'm the kind of personality, and I'm gonna move on from this. I'm the kind of personality where, to prevent me from having to be hypocritical, I don't put myself in situations where I have to seem like a hypocrite, right? It's like people sit back and say, oh, you think you're too good. It's like, no, I don't think I'm too good. What I don't do is I don't put myself in situations to where I have to make a decision that will make me look hypocritical. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if someone's doing something and I'm not really about what they're doing, I don't hang out with them while they're doing whatever it is. I avoid it actively, right? So when someone sit back and tries to group me in it, I'm like, no, I'm not part of that group. When have you ever seen me do anything with that group? When have you ever seen me associate with that group when they're doing something such as that? When have you ever seen me hanging out with that group after I'm aware that they even do stuff like that? I keep myself away from shit so I don't have to get swept up in that, if that makes any sense to y'all, right? Like the gossipers at your job. If you don't label as a gossiper, don't gossip with them. And I try to do my best to avoid being in situations like that. Moving on to the next thing. Colorado State. The head coach at Colorado State, man, he had made a comment about Coach Prime saying something to the effect of, when I talk to people, I take my hat and sunglasses off because that's how my mother raised me. I understand trash talk. I understand trash talk amongst rival teams, rival players, rival coaches. Okay, cool, I get it. But there's one thing, if you ever notice about Coach Prime, formerly known as Deion Sanders, he never talked bad about anybody else. And he even made a point to say that with his Colorado team, where we don't talk about anybody, but everybody wants to talk about us. If you really understand how life works, when you're doing something right, people always seem to want to put your name in their mouth. Well, let me put it this way. When you are doing something right that other people are unable to do, right? Because Coach Prime has a swag, Colorado. He has this aurora about him, and the players give it off too. It's like this vibe, like untouchable. Listen, I've had this saying: if you speak, you're cocky. If you're quiet, you're arrogant. So they have this arrogance about themselves because their play speaks for them instead of their mouth doing it, and it rubs those whose skill set isn't equivalent to yours the wrong way. Right? What's the sponsor for the podcast? Mile. Make it look easy. When you make something that's difficult seem as if it isn't, while others are struggling, those who can't do what you do, those who wish they can do what you do, those who have tried to do what you do and has failed at doing it miserably, see you do it with ease, your name is quick in their mouth, bro. And you looking at them like, what I do to you? And then the fact that you don't talk back fuels it even more because they want to bring you down to their level. Maybe that all was part of a facade for the ratings to amp up the kids from both schools. Either way, Colorado State lost. Even after the game, Coach Prime had nothing negative to say about the head coach of Colorado State. But it's just one of those things, man, when you're great amongst those who are trying to be good, you ruffle some feathers. I'm sure some of you guys are at jobs where your job, you do well, right? Whatever the job may possibly be, you probably kill that bitch. You slay at that job, right? I don't care what it is. Shout out to Gia at BioLife. She, when you do the anchor and you do the poke and nobody feels the needle go in, or when you're doing vitals and, everyone's blood pressure is low, 85, 84, 82, 76, 74, and everything just breezes through. And you get some people who are doing the vitals over that BioLife. I'm Marconi. What up, Gia? What up, Gina? I forgot about you. When you're doing the vitals of people and heart rates go up and they got to take a 5 to 10 minute break and they come back and they do it again and they can't donate that day, but they look over at you and everyone's in the high 70s, low 80s. They're mad because their people getting sent home, your people getting sent over to go to a section to donate, right? Or if you were working in a restaurant and you're a waitress or waiter and all the tables are dropping fat tips and someone else isn't getting any tip, they're mad at the customer for not dropping the tip. They're not mad at themselves by saying, I'm not being myself, or maybe I need to change who I need to address some of the issues that I have as myself. Maybe I'm too aggressive. maybe I'm moving too fast, maybe I'm not talking enough, I'm not being friendly, I'm not being approachable. Some of these cats, man, they see you killing it. They see you being great at something that they're not even good at. And they want to bring you down to their level. You know what I mean? So it's, be aware, be very, very aware of those kind of people, man, because like I said, intention and perception doesn't always align. So you want to make sure of that. You want to make damn sure of that. You aren't getting drugged in the mud for somebody else who is trying to piss you off on purpose to make themselves feel better, to rattle your game, to get you to come down to them so they can be able to say, I'm better than you right now. Right? It's one of those scenarios, man. So, you know, just be cautious, be careful on that. I made another post earlier too on, this is like last week actually, and this got some traction on my personal Facebook page. And if you go to the Instagram or the Twitter, there's a meme, and it says there's a photo of a Muslim woman and a photo of a nun, and it says, if this doesn't bother you, but this does bother you, it isn't your faith, it's your bigotry. And most people were thinking necessarily I meant from the religious aspect. And so to those folks, that's not what I was referring to necessarily, the religious aspect. And a friend of mine said, well, one made a choice, the other's forced. I said, well, those terms they're subjective, because there was a nun who left Catholicism and got into the adult entertainment world, as one example. And she speaks about what it was like living in that world of the church. And I think a lot of us, if you put in perspective, the outside of the church looking in, we have a different understanding of those inside the church looking out. Same with sports, same with politics, same with anything that you're not a part of. When you're on the outside looking in, it appears to be one way. But when you're involved in said organization and you kind of see the intricacies of how things operate or don't operate, it gives you a different understanding of how much those of us on the outside do not understand what's going on. And in some cases, you know, you have NDAs, you have these contractual agreements that you can't speak on it, even if you want to, right? Even afterwards, there's like non-disclosure. You can't, you know, what do they call it? They call it like a non-disclosure where you can't talk about it. And for me, I've always thought, like, when organizations and stuff give you NDAs to sign, it kind of makes me feel, what do you guys got going on that you're afraid that if I leave, you don't want me spilling any beans about it? You know, that could be a cynical way of looking at it, but it's not. Or not. But the purpose of this particular meme is, you will look at, for example, the Catholic nun, and you think holy, and God, and purity, and peace, and love. But then you look at the Muslim woman, and you think servitude, or you think violence, or you think some type of captive, or some of you immediately associate with 9/11, you know, that type of thing, right? One of the guys on my Facebook, Bill, he says, growing up in a Catholic school, I don't ever remember getting spanked with a ruler by a Muslim woman, but I do remember getting spanked with rulers and sticks and switches by Catholic nuns. So yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. It's kind of one of those things where our perception versus the intention are two completely different things. And when it comes, listen, this is a whole other conversation we're going to start eventually about religion. But I have this belief. Religion is a scam. Now, there's a difference between being religious and there's a difference between being spiritual or having faith or believing in something. But organized religion, I stopped doing that type of thing when I got old enough to ask questions about it, and certain people were never able to give me direct answers, and it was always a running in circle type of situation to find it, until one day I just said, you know what, I'm going to think for myself and kind of figure some things out. And there's certain things that just don't add up, and I'm gonna have that conversation on another podcast. But definitely when it comes to like this example, it kind of just made me think how there's so many people, brown people in religion, that are viewed and looked at differently than some of the palm-colored brothers and sisters that we have in a different religion that's held to a higher light. And it's very interesting, because even in the Bible it said that Satan will take over the earth. Satan runs earth. That's his domain. So he's going to run this to get as many as he can get to go with him by Judgment Day. Well, metaphorically, if Satan runs earth, you got to ask yourself, what government runs the world? And a lot of the situations that we're facing, certain tax brackets, certain demographics, certain zip codes, certain area codes, certain groups of people, there's a lot of division that's orchestrated, designed, and architected by a certain group of people who look a certain type of way and instill certain type of beliefs in certain people. So, I mean, hey, you could take that however the hell you want to take that. That's completely up to y'all. Appreciate that. But that's my thing. And like I said, it's a very interesting thought. I was watching the movie Inside Man, one of top 10 Denzel Washington films. I know in another episode I gave a top 5, but it's definitely in my top 10, where Vikram Malia, I believe that's what the character's name was, he comes out of the bank, and when they pulled the cover off his eyes and the mask off his face, the guy was like a fucking Arab. And he was like, I'm a Sikh. First of all, and completely different beliefs between the two. Completely different. But they saw him in his turban and immediately jumped to the conclusion the way they jumped to the conclusion. They disrespected him because of his appearance, what he looked like. Right? Again, it was in the movie Inside Man, so I understand it was a film. I understand, but it's definitely something that happens on a regular basis in real life, man. We associate things and then we compartmentalize it to be a reality. And if those pieces don't fit, we jam them to fit them, because it's not like, oh, well, maybe this doesn't go here. Actuality, it goes over here in this section. we have to jam something into it. And it goes back into the conversation I had before when it comes to, just when you see something that you associate, it has to be what it has to be. Otherwise, there's something wrong with it. It's not the fact that maybe this doesn't fit the circumstance, and I'm provoking it to become true. I'm antagonizing it to become true. Just like with the post I'm talking about right now. Sometimes the perception and their intention doesn't always align. And I think a lot of us, what we should do is stop trying to force things to being what we believe it to be, and allow certain things to develop into, it's its own category. Because not everything is the same of what you may have heard or what you may have read, right? Everyone's different perspectives. So, you might have a different perspective of something completely different than the next person. And next thing you know, you guys are looking at the same exact thing, but two different perspectives based on experiences, based on lack of experiences, whether it's your experience, someone else's experience, whatever the case might possibly be. So, try to be a little bit more lenient when it comes to making judgment necessarily. And one of my strengths is also one of my weaknesses, one of my biggest issues, because I would take a situation and I'll always dive into it with the question of why. I always do that. Why is it this way? Right? Like, why are people respond this way? Why do people react this way? Why do people treat people this way? Okay. Why do they do that way? Okay. Well, why were they raised that way? Okay. Well, what is always one of those whys? And for me, always diving deep into why when it comes to these situations of prejudice or ignorance or sports, it gives me a different understanding than the average person. That's just me. It gives me a different understanding, and it allows me to have a little bit of room into being patient with them, because in most cases, people are only responding or reacting in a way because this is the environment that they've been grown up in. This is the environment they're raised in. This is the environment they know. Your environment is a foreign environment, so they're responding or reacting based on what they know. And it takes someone time and it takes someone trust to understand that shit. So, intention and perception may not always align. So you kind of got to have, let me rephrase that. I would think one would have patience to know that much. So that's pretty much what I want to say today's podcast, man. Oh, and before I end, my Raiders got their ass kicked this weekend. It was, listen, the first quarter was cool. Then they started doing Raider shit, which was super annoying. To any Raider fan who's listening to this right now, it's not the quarterback, bro. It's not the quarterback. It was never Derek Carr's fault. I'm not a Derek Carr apologist, but I am a Derek Carr fan. That dude, along with the 18 quarterbacks we had before him, all had the same struggle: incompetent ownership and front office. Do I expect my Raiders to do something this season? Yeah, not much. But hey, I'm going to keep the faith. Simple as that. Oh, and one last thing too. Cake's Bakery is about to become a thing. Y'all about to see it in the next few weeks. It's your boy, it's D Cal for the E.I.T.H.R podcast. E.I.T.H.R. free subscription, gnsetv.com. Appreciate that. We'll talk to you guys next time for episode 136. You guys be good, man. We out.